Okay, so chapter 8 is, we're going to call it the Great Dynasties of China. So, for us to get to China, right now we're in Arabia. For us to get to China, can anyone tell me which direction on the compass do we need to go? North, south, east, west?
East.
Yes, we need to travel east. So we're going to travel further east, all the way kind of past India, and on to China. So China is often known as part of the Far East, whereas Arabia is the Middle East, and China is part of what we call the Far East. Later we're going to be including other countries that are even further over toward the east that will be exciting. Yep, Japan and Korea, right over here. But that's going to happen on a different week. Yes, so I'm going to give you a map now that's going to show you.
Somebody else. I love the maps.
Yes, me too. I love maps. History and maps always go together. Can you pass one to Luke, please? Thank you. Okay, so there's a lot to talk about with China, but we're going to just cover the very big high points on that. The most important thing on the map I gave you is the two rivers. The two rivers that you'll see there, the Yellow River and the Yangtze River. Those are two very important rivers in the history of China. So China had you guys already know what a dynasty is, right?
Yes.
We talked about the Gupta dynasty. A family that is ruling over a large area is a dynasty, and they usually pass it on to their sons, in some cases daughters, the dynasties. So the one we're going to talk about first is called the Sui Dynasty.
Yeah, I usually hear the word dynasty relating to China.
Yep, they have some very famous dynasties. So, but before the Sui Dynasty, in very old times, much earlier, there was something called the Han Dynasty that united much of China. The thing about the Han Dynasty, though, all the way back in, right here on our timeline, in 220, the Han Dynasty ended.
Why?
Well, different reasons, but we can't get into today, but the Han Dynasty ended about 220. So for a long time, from 220 all the way to, let's see, right here, all the way to 581, China wasn't united. And it was a difficult time for them. It was kind of like a dark ages, I guess we could say, in the time of China, between the Han and the Sui Dynasty. It was a long period of time between 220 and 581. So the Sui Dynasty was started when a man named Yang Qian united or brought together many different kingdoms within China. Still at this time.
Well, why is it called the Sui Dynasty?
I guess that was a family name that they used, but Yang Qian is a personal name of a man who united them, the first king of the Sui Dynasty. So at this time, the people of northern China and southern China did not like each other. That seems to be a common theme in history. People from the north and the south, or the east and the west, they don't like each other. So what did Yang Qian do? Well, he eventually, by 589, a few years after that, he finally united north and south together. So he was actually from the north, and he invaded the south and won. So he took over, and he founded the Sui Dynasty in 581, and it lasted all the way from 581 to, check this out, from 581 to 614.
Oh, that wasn't a lot.
Yeah. So it wasn't a long time, was it?
No, it was like 30, less than a lifetime.
Yeah, it wasn't too long. So, but it was a great accomplishment. He was able to bring the people of China, north and south, together over this period of time. Some big things they did is they actually they were able to feed more people during this time. There were less people starving, always a good thing, right? And he actually reorganized the government and standardized the money system. So they had the same money all throughout their empire during this time. You can see it stretched over a wide part of what is today China. You can see the outline of modern-day China, and you can see some of these areas that they had. So the northerners and the southerners, they could not travel easily between their two areas because of these rivers that were blocking their way, the Yellow River and the Yangtze River. So one of the Sui emperors connected the north and the south with a Grand Canal. Can you see it on your map? See the Grand Canal? That was actually created, it was man-made, and that made it go north and south. So they didn't have to walk to get over the river, they would just send boats sailing north to south along this canal. That's a great accomplishment, right?
How do they make a
They
canal?
dig deep and then they fill up with water.
The emperor, I'll tell you how they did it. The emperor, his name was Yang Di. He was the one who completed this canal. And the way he did it, he forced many, many people to work on it. He would get all the younger people, all the strong men would have to come out and work on the canal. And from each family, he would also take maybe one older man and a woman from the family to work on it. And, yes, Luke?
So that means there are two Yangs?
Yeah. This was part of the family name. So there were something else that made people angry. Of course they didn't like this because he forced them to work on it. But he made them pay 10 years of taxes in advance to pay for this canal. So what do you think the people did?
They rebelled.
They rebelled, and they killed Yang Di. But during the time that Yang Di was there, he would sail these large barges up and down the canal and make a big show. And that's often what emperors do. So sometimes they get a little too showy, they get a little greedy, and things happen.
And they died.
But, it was a great accomplishment making this canal, and it was a work that many people were forced to do. So after this, this empire ended about 614, and the next one started very soon after, 4 years later, in 618.
So what happened when there's no dynasty?
It's kind of a time when there's kind of a lot of individual places are kind of trying to do their own thing, or there's fighting between different places as people try to make a new dynasty. Well, after the Sui Dynasty, it moves on to what we call the Tong Dynasty.
Is the Tong Dynasty a better dynasty?
Well, it depends on how you judge them, but it did last a lot longer. And this one was, I'll just write the number here, from 618 to 907. So it did last a lot longer. Yes, Luke?
Tang Dynasty had lots of inventions in it, right?
Yes, you're exactly right, Luke. That's good. They did. So the first emperor of the Tang Dynasty was a guy named Li Yuan. I shouldn't just say a guy, but a man named Li Yuan. And he actually made people happy in 3 different ways. He made the city stronger and cleaner. He told people they could follow any religion they wanted, which people were, oh yeah, okay, you can follow whatever you want. And people were happier with that, kind of like somewhat like a religious freedom. And he also encouraged trading with other places. So he helped China to become richer and more powerful, and this started a golden age of China.
There are so many golden ages.
Yep, all over the world at different times there have been golden ages.
Is there a golden age of America?
Good question. I guess history will tell us at some point. No. During this time, China was the largest nation in the world. Wow, China was bigger than any other nation at this time. And it's still big today, of course, but it's very different today. And it stretched as far as modern-day Korea. Let me bring up the new map for this. It stretched over into Korea. What is Korea today? Here's the Tang Dynasty.
Korea was Korea.
And actually this doesn't show it, but this map, but this is later it stretched over toward modern day Korea. And it also stretched into Afghanistan, which is up here.
Wow.
This map's not showing everything, but, and to the west. into Afghanistan,
So it looks not as big as the Sui Dynasty.
and south into Thailand. Yeah, this map is not so good. So let's look at the map you're using there. That's a better one, the map that I gave you. But anyways, it stretched over a wide area. And
It doesn't seem as big as the Sui Dynasty.
the reason they stretched over in west through Afghanistan and tried to take this whole area here was they were trying to control a trading road called the Silk Road. The Silk Road. Why do you think they called it the Silk Road?
Because it was covered with silk.
No, it wasn't. Well, I guess
Oh,
it wasn't covered with silk. Yeah. Yes, Luke.
they import silk.
That's right.
So that means they deliver
Yeah,
silk?
exactly. So China was very famous for silk, for making silk. They had a way to make it that nobody else could do. And so many countries in the West wanted silk. And so the Silk Road was an area that would go, past through the Gobi Desert and past the Himalaya Mountains to allow people to move silk back and forth and other goods as well across this Silk Road. So at this time, China was working to control that. Many people were wealthy and happy in China at this time, and they told lots of stories, and they made music and art. They actually printed books at this time. They did this by using wooden blocks. They would carve the Chinese writing onto wooden blocks, and then they would dip it in ink, and kind of like a printing press, right?
This is like stamps.
Like a stamp, exactly right. So they were able to make lots of books this way from these carved blocks.
It looks easier
It's
than copying it down.
Yeah, it's easier than copying it down. But at this time, Europe, they were all still handwriting their books. Well, what made China make this invention faster than many other countries? Well, there's a lot of questions about that, but it may be because their writing system was so complex with those, what we call kanji, those pictograms, that it was so complex to do so many. Maybe it made it so much easier for them. They came up with an idea out of necessity to make these blocks.
Really hard carve it because when you stamp it has to be the right way. And if you just do it like this and then
Right.
stamp it over.
Yeah, because the Roman letters we use in English are so much simpler and easier for anyone to kind of make in many cases, but the others were difficult. So they had this system of stamping, an amazing advancement. They also used sap from lacquer trees to paint on wood and cloth to make it a hard, smooth surface, so they were able to make nicer bowls and things to eat out of. From wood, it would make the wood smooth, the lacquer.
Silk bowls?
Yep, not silk. They were lacquer bowls. Okay. Also, Chinese scientists during this time were trying to figure out how to make gold.
I spell lacquer.
You ever heard of somebody trying to make gold?
Yes.
Lacquer.
Those people are often called alchemists. Let me spell that for you, Luke. Good question. Lacquer is spelled like this.
Has anyone ever figured out how to make gold?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, so
If
alchemists.
they have, they're keeping it a secret.
Yeah, alchemists started out by trying to make simple metals into gold.
Right, that's what they tried to do because gold is so valuable, right? But if they make so much of it, it won't be valuable anymore. Anyway, so also at this time, Chinese scientists invented gunpowder,
Ooh.
which ended up being a very big advancement.
In weaponry.
Yeah, so they did it by accident. They invented this gunpowder. As they were trying to make the gold, I don't know the whole story. At this time, there was also a lot of huge things the emperor would do that were just kind of, we would call it crazy excess. He actually had 100 dancing horses. The horses, when a certain music would play or a gong, the horses would dance together. So,
How? How
yeah,
did they dance?
the story of that is in your Story of the World book, so you can check that out. Yes, Luke.
And they invented a compass too, didn't they?
The compass? Oh, did you hear about that? Yeah, we can look into that. They did a lot of great inventions during this golden age of China. What do you think the main religion was in China at this time? Any ideas? We'll talk about that for just a minute, the religion.
I don't know.
Yeah, the main religion at this
Buddhism?
time. Buddhism was there, and it was actually, they allowed that to come in. Remember, the emperor at this time said you could follow
you can
whatever
follow
religion you
whatever.
wanted, right? So Buddhism did come in, and also Christianity started to come in at this time. What are called Nestorian Christians, which are maybe a little different than what you know, but they actually started to come in. Buddhism started to become popular with some of the more wealthy people in China, but Christianity I shouldn't say wealthy, but many people in China started to follow Buddhism, but Christianity wasn't. They didn't start following it at that time. Wasn't until later. But let me write down the name of the religion that was biggest in China at that time, and has had a very big impact on the East, the Far East. You ever heard of this man?
Yes.
Yes.
Confucius, right? And the religion of Confucius...
Was Buddha.
Nope. Confucianism. Confucianism.
Sounds like you're confused with Confucius.
Yeah, in English it does sound a bit like the word confused. That's the way to remember it. But Confucianism was a very
Confusing.
complex philosophy and system.
That's why it must
And-
be confusing.
And one of the things that's very important about Confucianism that still really affects the Far East today, including China, Korea, and Japan, is it taught having a lot of high reverence, or I should say high respect for your parents. And respecting parents, respecting authority. So Confucianism is a very important system of philosophy. It's kind of like a religion, but it's more like a philosophy, I guess you could say. But it was followed by many people in China
Do we use
during this time.
Confucianism?
Well, there's a lot of influence from Confucianism still today, even here, but especially in countries in the East. One of the things that's famous in Japan, where Confucianism came over there, was the idea of the three monkeys who are doing see no evil, hear no evil,
What's that?
speak no evil. You ever heard of that?
No.
There's a famous carving in Japan of this at one of the Toshogu shrine. But one of the things that Confucius
What are the
taught,
words again? What's the words that they said?
see no evil, so don't see evil things. Hear no evil, don't listen to evil things. And speak no evil, don't say evil things. So there's all these different, that's kind of one of the ideas of Confucianism that's continued in a popular culture and even has reached to America and Western countries. So at this time also, they made a lot of buildings, and they designed the first pagoda.
What's that?
What's a pagoda? Ever heard of a pagoda?
Yes, but I forgot.
Sounds
Yeah.
like a pagan.
Well, you can see pagodas all over China, all over other countries throughout the East. Yes.
It's like those roof tower things.
Yeah, it's a tower that has many floors on it, going up to the top, these pagodas. And so they were built mainly as Buddhist temples at this time. Usually the pagoda has 8 sides. They believe that was lucky. It was built with clay bricks on a stone foundation. And pagodas could be from 5 to 13 stories high. And a pagoda would stretch, pagodas, they would almost always have an odd number of floors. 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, because they believed that an even number was unlucky.
Oh, that's superstition.
Right. So let me show you on a picture here of a pagoda. These are some images of pagodas. So this is a famous one you can see here in China, these multi-level pagodas.
How many are there?
There were thousands all over, and still today there's quite a
What do
few.
you do with the Legos again?
Luke,
Lego.
and Luke saw a pagoda in Ebina, in the town where we lived. Yes, the Lego one. That's a nano block, actually. There was a pagoda, actually, in the town where we lived, in the middle of the shopping plaza. Yeah?
But that one has 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Maybe that's not an actual floor there, I don't know. But that's what they said in China. And so this has moved on to other places. This is actually looks like a pagoda there in Japan. So there's many different kinds of pagodas that spread around the world. You can see there.
What do you do in those again? What do you do in pagodas again?
Well, they were used as a part of a Buddhist temple.
So they're temples.
Yeah, they're like a form of temple. So Chinese believed that these pagodas were lucky. They would keep away the winds and the floods. They would keep evil spirits happy. And they would bring good things to the area, like a good crop and all these things. The oldest pagoda was actually built, the oldest pagoda that's still standing today, was built in 523. So way back here at the time, before the time of Emperor Justinian. There's a pagoda still in China today that was built all the way back in 523. So it was built actually before the Tang Dynasty started, but the Tang Dynasty is when many pagodas, many pagodas spread around the country. A lot of beautiful architecture. Something else, just a few more things, and then we'll finish up today. They also had a lot of art at this time. And one thing that they did that you didn't find at this time in most cultures was they did a lot of abstract art. Have you learned about abstract art yet?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not a picture of something real, but it's like an image that's supposed to not look like something.
Yeah.
But
then it can accidentally, somebody can interpret it as something.
yeah, people can interpret it different ways. So one of the artists was famous for saying that he didn't want to paint what he saw, but he would go out and he would look at something for a long time. And then he would go away back into his room, and he wouldn't paint what he saw, but what he felt, the feeling of the place. And so it was an abstract art. So there are many different paintings, including, they did a lot of painting on silk. And what do you think happens to silk paintings?
It gets hard.
Yeah, actually silk paintings don't last very long, it seems. They're not very strong, but so we don't have so many paintings that survive today. And it was said that a woman named L.E.I. Lei, I guess how it's pronounced. She was the.
Where is it? Oh yeah.
She was supposed to be the first Chinese painter, and she was a sister of the emperor. So this woman was they said the first Chinese painter. Yeah.
Couldn't they instead sew it onto it?
Yeah, they could have done some sewing, but this was a form of painting they did on silk. And also there was a lot of poetry at this time.
Oh, I don't like poetry that much. It's so confusing.
Yeah, it can be. Poetry can be. So, but you may learn to love it at some point. Okay, so after the Tang Dynasty ended in 907, there were a lot of different. China divided into 5 different dynasties, 10 kingdoms. There was a lot of problems, all the way up until. Well, we won't talk about this now, but in 1279. I'm sorry, starting in 960, from 960 to 1279. There was something called the Song Dynasty. And the Song Dynasty lasted, you can see for quite a while. So China is, the history of China, there's a lot of, dynasties that happen and they fall, and there's some different fighting that goes on, then another dynasty rises up.
Is there any dynasties today?
Well, in China today, I guess you could say the Communist Party of China is kind of a dynasty of its own, I guess. They are the rulers of China currently. So it's a little different today. Okay, so a lot of things we talked about. So I want you to find on your map. Can you find the Yellow River?
Yeah.
Yes, good. It's the one to the north. It flows from west to east, and it's on the north. And I would recommend that you color that one. The Yellow River should be colored blue. No, I'm kidding. Yellow. So it actually, you could color that yellow. Where's the Yangtze River?
Here.
Yeah, it's further to the south. So you'll see the Yangtze. It also flows from west to east.
Color it because it doesn't.
Yeah, I just draw along it. And you can trace along the Yangtze River, maybe trace that blue or a different color. And then the Grand Canal, you can make that a different color, which goes from north to south, south to north, right? Okay, any questions from anything today? We need to finish up.
I already colored that.
For today. Good job. Okay. So thank you for joining us today for the history class, and we'll see you next week for more exciting history.
Yes.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed it, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing. And for more information, please check us out at justusprep.com.